Welcome. This is our presentation on the app Quizlet and how to integrate it into a lesson plan on research skills and vocabulary terms. Our group consisted of Donna Sykes, Laura Sly, and Myra Springfield. The problems that we address are technology and study skills. Using the Quizlet app or program, we are integrating Web 2.0 or mobile learning. How do these things affect the 4 C's? We start with communication, in that students must be able to clearly define vocabulary words to be used by other students. With collaboration, the students are clearly having to work together as a group to search the terms in order to make the final project. In critical thinking, the students are using research skills to understand the meaning of vocabulary and not just using memorization skills. Finally, with creativity, the creative side comes into play when the students are able to play the games within the Quizlet app, not just a simple flipping of flashcards. With Quizlet, we're using a Web 2.0 or mobile app versus students using traditional flashcards to gain knowledge of common research terms. Making flashcards using Quizlet is much faster than making traditional paper flashcards. This allows for students to spend more time learning than on simple busy work. The technology also helps students narrow down what they need to study. The Quizlet program or app will present missed flashcards to students more often than the cards that they do get correct. To start, we'll discuss the instructional problems we hope to address in developing this lesson plan. As students start to learn about research, there are several vocabulary terms that they will need to know. Unfortunately, sometimes students have trouble reconciling these terms with real-world applications. They may know the meaning of the word search engine, but they don't necessarily understand how it works. To address this problem, we created a lesson that is designed to teach students these research skills as they learn the vocabulary words themselves. In other words, we don't just give them the definitions. They must use research skills in order to find them. Additionally, with the introduction of Quizlet, students learn valuable study skills as well as the various technological applications that can make these tasks even easier. This lesson is intended for students in the 4th or 5th grade, can be done in a media center or classroom with several computers. This lesson will probably span 3 to 4 days, depending on how much time is spent in each area. This lesson could be implemented by either a classroom teacher or a media specialist, though we think the subject matter of research skills is especially suited to the media specialist. Students will work as part of a group, 3 to 4 students each, and each group should have access to a computer with internet access. Each group will also need a login to Quizlet, though we suggest that the teacher have this set up beforehand. The basic version of Quizlet is free and is all that is needed for this lesson. This lesson will begin with an explanation of the task. Students will work in groups to research definitions for various vocabulary words, and then we'll create flashcards on Quizlet using these definitions. Additionally, students will critique each other's work using this rubric. The teacher will also grade the students using this rubric, but it should be made clear to students that the teacher grade is the only one that will count. Students are given this rubric up front to ensure that the expectations are clear. Students will be given instructions on basic research skills, such as search engines, dictionaries, and other online resources. There is a job aid available with screen caps of each step, but it is also suggested that the teacher be available to provide hands-on assistance. The idea of this step is to teach students how to research by involving them in the technology. Students are to follow along as they perform the steps on their own computer or device. Several suggestions are given to students to help them during this process, and the students are advised to use several different sources to come up with the best definition for each word. Screenshots are provided below on our website. Once students have come up with definitions for each word, they will be given a short introduction to Quizlet. Quizlet is pretty easy to use, so there shouldn't be much of a learning curve during class. Students will create flashcards for each word in Quizlet and save their work under their group name. Once all students have completed their set of flashcards, each group will be instructed to view another group's flashcards and critique them using the rubric. Below on our website, you see where we have created instructions for Quizlet. Using the rubric, students are critiqued on the following criteria: spelling, following directions, accuracy of definitions, and how easily the flashcards are to understand and use. The idea of having students critique each other's work is twofold. Not only will students be forced to think critically about how to clearly define vocabulary words so that other students are able to use and understand them, but the students will be able to use the various study applications available in Quizlet to actually study the terms. By creating their own definitions of the word, and then by viewing the definitions created by their peers, students will begin to study and understand the meanings of these words rather than simply memorizing them, as is the case with most flashcard applications. By going down to the bottom, we can see the scatter game and the race game that the students can play in Quizlet using either the cards they created or the cards that their peers have created. In addition to the 4 C's, we feel this lesson plan meets several of John Hattie's influences on learning. This is important because while we're integrating Quizlet and other technologies into the learning, the technology isn't enough. The lesson plan has to include other factors which play a bigger role in influencing a student's learning. For example, Hattie says that good learning comes from clarity in explaining content. The lesson provides several different ways for students to understand the content, from teacher explanation to job aids, which they can refer to at a later date. Additionally, students are given a rubric up front so they know what the expectations are for the lesson. Also, as mentioned as part of the 4 C's, students are involved with critical thinking and collaboration, which also happen to be mentioned by Hattie as influential to learning. And finally, the lesson allows for periodic informal formative evaluation by the teacher. The lesson plan is flexible enough that the teacher can alter the lesson as needed to provide additional learning. Likewise, because students are working as part of a group, they are able to help each other if the teacher is only momentarily unavailable. Though we weren't able to implement the lesson plan, there were some lessons we learned from the development of this project. For one, this project will probably require a lot of teacher observation and involvement. In fact, we think it may be helpful to have the teacher show students how to use the various research resources and Quizlet on a smart board or Promethean board, as the students follow along on their own computers and the job aid provided. Additionally, students may need help with typing and other technological skills, as well as collaboration skills, particularly if they don't have much experience in these areas. Finally, Quizlet is a great application for studying, but the fact that it is Quizlet alone is not appropriate for teaching and learning without some type of an additional lesson planning. Simply giving students a word and a definition is not enough to involve critical thinking. Quizlet is a great resource as long as an additional learning is involved. And that's all, folks, as my 5th grade students like to end each of their presentations with this past year. We decided to end it as well as on ours. That's all, folks.